Oh, okay. Hello, everyone.
Wow.
Sorry, I jumped the gun there.
Well, we all did, I think.
I don't know
Anyway,
what's going
welcome
on.
to the Energy Realities podcast. In the middle of winter in the Northern Hemisphere, never heard of season before. We have David Blackman in Texas. How are things in Texas, David?
Very frozen and cold, and but the natural gas system didn't freeze up, so we're all fat and happy in Texas.
That's great. I hope it stays that way. We've got Tammy Nemeth in the UK. You look cold, Tammy. Are you?
I am bundled up in sympathy with David and Stu. I thought I'm going to wear my big sweater, just to be in collaboration, sympathy with our colleagues in America who are freezing on the East Coast there. So
We appreciate it.
Central East, I guess. Yeah.
That's a real friend. How's the weather in the UK?
It is gray, and it was like 4 degrees Celsius this morning, so a bit chilly, but otherwise, typical gray winter.
Usual English weather. Great. And Stu Turley in. Where are you, Stu? Stu has frozen.
I'm up in Oklahoma, and we got about a foot of snow, and we are having some StreamYard issues today. But I got out of my Ranger and saw a eagle, bobcat, and a bunch of other things around, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, you got to have fun in this stuff because I am a redneck.
And proud of it, as you should be. Okay, so last week we had the World Economic Forum Summit in Davos, and I'm going to start with a challenge to all of you. Excluding President Trump's speech, what was the highlight of that week for all of you? Who wants to start?
Mark Carney.
Okay, David.
Carney's speech, I think, was the show stealer, and I suppose we can call it that. And Davos. I always thought it was Davos. So thank you for correcting my
Yeah, it
pronunciation.
makes sense in English to be Davos.
Yeah, I mean our media. That's how everybody in our media pronounces it. I'm shocked that they do it wrong. But Carney's speech really kind of brought down the house. It was the only one of the whole week that got a standing ovation. It was pretty clearly anti-American, although he never, as far as I could tell, said the words United States or Donald Trump throughout the speech, but clearly he was alluding many times in that direction. But he signaled his belief that we've entered into a new world order. I think he's right about that. I think that's clearly the objective of the Trump administration, to end the liberal world order that was established post-World War II. That's going to lead to a lot of shifting alliances, both in trade and I think in security and geopolitics in the coming years. And so it's going to be a pretty active and to many upsetting time over the next 8 to 10 years. I hope I get to live through it all at my advanced age, to see how it all comes out. But I would have to say Carney really kind of, other than Trump, stole the show.
That's why I wanted to exclude the Trump speech, because we can talk about it later. Yeah. What about what Carney said about energy, all these admissions that the net zero push hasn't really worked? And I read a Substack post by an author named Pandreco, and he put it really, really well in saying that he was cheered so much by the European leaders because it was kind of finally somebody's saying it and it's not us.
Yeah.
So I think that's one way of saying it. But Tammy, what do you think?
Oh, well, I didn't listen to his speech. I read it. And to me, what it sounded like was a perfect example of gaslighting, projection, and hypocrisy. I mean, and also that it pays to be a leading figure of the global progressive movement, because no expense was spared to amplify his comments. And what I found so interesting about it is that in his vagueness, the way David described that he never specifically said the United States, people from both sides could interpret it as they wish, right? It could mean China, it could mean anyone who's considered a hegemon. But of course, we all know in the progressive lexicon, the hegemon is America. It's not China. China is the poor victim communist state that's just trying to make its way in the world. And it's the big bad Americans with their army and military, whatever, that threatens everybody, threatens Greenland. And the comments that I heard from the more left people in the UK was that Carney was speaking the honest truth to power. And and I'm just like, really? Okay. But I thought what Trump's response was about Canada being ungrateful is actually quite true. Canada's been riding on the coattails of the United States since at least the 1960s, and definitely throughout the 70s. And the whole rhetoric coming out of Mark Carney, whether it's at Davos or he had another national speech on Friday or Saturday or something. I think it was Friday, outside his caucus. I mean, all of that is the exact same rhetoric we heard in the 1970s. When he talked about there being a third way at Davos, he was talking about the third option that Pierre Trudeau put forward, which was Canada was going to diversify its trade, move away from reliance on the United States, and do all this other stuff. So the progressives in Canada have been talking like this since the late 60s and throughout the 70s until Brian Mulroney. So, to me, this is a typical gaslighting, hypocrisy type thing, because, Mark Carney, I thought it was really an abomination of him doing the greengrocer analogy from Václav Havel. I thought that was just so wrong for him to use that analogy, because number one, he didn't understand what it really meant, and number two, he's been doing it in Canada, where there's laws in Canada where if a person misgenders someone, they go to jail. So talk about talking about illusions and being able to call out illusions. Canada's living in an illusion where you're not even allowed to say what biological reality is without going to jail. And they have legislation that they're drafting that will do pre-thought crimes. So if they think that maybe you might say something hateful in the future, they'll throw you in jail. So here he is talking about illusions and everything when he's been the epitome of it and is leading the charge in Canada. And one last thing before I end here. During the convoy protest in 2022, 4 years ago, Carney was advising Justin Trudeau. He wrote an op-ed in the Globe and Mail where he called those protesters traitors. And what they were doing was treasonous. And he was the one who encouraged Chrystia Freeland to go to the banks to debank these people. So talking about illusions and hegemons and using coercion, he's the epitome of it.
I don't know what to say. This sounds really, really bad.
Yeah.
But I read the other day that they are providing assisted suicide, assisted death. How are they calling it? To people with mental problems, including suicidal thoughts. It's, if you want to control population size, I guess that's one way. It's just not a very moral or ethical way.
And they're selling the organs. So they've been doing this assisted suicide and then selling the organs. And if you look at the statistics, the number of deaths from the assisted death legislation has sent a Canadian death rate skyrocketing, because that's where the majority of deaths are coming from. And then they're harvesting the organs and selling them into the international market. It's disgusting. But we're not allowed to say it. So talk about illusions.
Well, you are, because you're not in Canada.
Right.
Well, I mean, and that's very reminiscent of Planned Parenthood in the United States, and which was caught selling organs of aborted fetuses for a profit. And really had a pretty massive operation, and probably still does, as far as I know, in that regard. But you weren't allowed to say it on Facebook or Twitter before Elon Musk bought Twitter, or you'd get suspended. You couldn't even talk about it. So same thing.
This is stunning. Stu, what was the highlight of the World Economic Forum for you?
I think there are about 4 or 5. And I think Howard Lucknick hit it out of the park. He has several key things he said. We've got those kind of teed up here. I also think the German Chancellor Putz, whatever his name is it Putz yet?
I think it's Mertz, isn't it?
Mertz Putz. I want to understand. I've got the same haircut he has, but he has something that I kept wanting to put something on his head and buff this little spot that he's got growing here. It's like a footprint on his head that is it like a ponytail coming out of the front? Not sure what that is, if it's a fashion statement, but he did bring up a great point. And that is the fact that he goes, the green energy deal is really not working out so good. And I think finally an admission from him. Now, whether or not he's going to do anything with it is something else, but it is an admission. That is something that is very critical. Yeah,
that was Putz calling you, Stu. Yeah,
it was actually President Trump, but I'll let him go to voicemail. But when you sit back and take a look at where I think the most important thing out of Davos is that Stu Turley's actually right about the new trading blocks. And I about broke my arm patting myself on my back going, I am about brilliant for once in my life. And my wife was just kind of laughing. She goes, you have been right on this. And that was the first time in 40 years my wife has ever said I was right about anything. And the new trading blocks that are realigning, I had said that they were going to be broken out by what energy policies they're following. And energy policies also go with left-wing nut job policies, and that is aligning with China, and it is rolling out just like I had been talking about. So this is almost Davos. How am I supposed to say it now? Davos. Davos is actually a victory lap for me, talking about how the trading blocks are aligning. And I'm really worried about Canada and this new relationship with China as it becomes formalized, because there is the paragraph. There's a paragraph in the trading thing that says we can cancel the trading thing if they sign another trading one without talking to us about it. And if they sign something in China, President Trump can pull the trigger on it, and hundreds of thousands of Canadians can lose jobs immediately. 4% of GDP is about to go bonkers. Greenland was one of the biggest things that came out of Davos. And I think that the NATO troops, all 37 of them that were deployed to Greenland, was absolutely a hoot. I'm sorry. UK sent one guy. He must be like holy smokes, Batman, Rambo, from the UK. I wonder how ugly his teeth are. My goodness. Anyway, when you sit back and look at Greenland, let's play this, because this is really telling. Howard's speech really set the globalization speech. But since we're on Greenland, here is how Howard responded to the question.
Vital for the United States of America. Our national security people are on it.
StreamYard is not working very well this morning. I am not sure what's going on.
With our allies.
All right, one last time.
But the Western Hemisphere matters to the United States of America, and the United States of America, as I've just articulated, really matters to the world. When America shines, the world shines, because they all need to make sure America is strong and powerful to take care of them, God forbid. And so I think America and the Western Hemisphere are vital to America, and I'm going to leave that to my national security people to address.
I have his national security folks. They just called a second ago. Here they are. Okay, I'm not playing the music because the music is really good music, but on our YouTube channels, it gets it really bad. But the AI is getting out of hand. But I think that this is really pretty funny when you sit back and think the EU 8 countries. Isn't that great? Now I love this next one. We have they're riding in a
Cybertruck.
Cybertruck, and then you go, woo! Okay, this is how I really perceive Greenland to go. And then you have JD Vance whacking. Anyway, that was really cool because what is this magic? Okay. So you take a look at what really is going on, and this is now becoming a joke. It is really the end of the globalization, and Howard goes through. We are having such really horrific problems with StreamYard. I don't want to play Howard's thing. It is very important. He says globalization failed in the United States. Offshoring everything that we were doing absolutely eviscerated all of our jobs, all of the money, and then poor old China in the corner got all of the jobs and everything else. Canada has made a major mistake. They could have go ahead and if they had finished the pipeline, the Keystone Pipeline sooner without any problems, we would be all locked in and everything would have been fine. They have now got some serious problems because now China is going to be trying to take care, going over the Trans Mountain Pipeline and buying more oil there. That's all fine and good, but it is the new trading deal that will bankrupt Canada. It's a pretty big deal.
Sorry, Stu, I got to correct you there. Yeah. Keystone was America. The pipeline was friggin' built to the border. Well, it was ready. Just had to be connected and built through. It was Obama.
Obama first and then Joe Biden.
Yeah.
It could have been done earlier, and there are some things in there as well. But I actually, if you want to know, it was Warren Buffett, because he has the railroads. He's the one that called Biden. You want to get really particular on it.
Well, yeah, but Buffett got Obama involved against it. Yes,
exactly.
But Joe Biden canceled it the first day of his presidency.
But there are other pipelines that Canada cannot get built in order to get their products to market. They've been waiting for. It is on Canada because they have not gotten their pipelines done to get to market. They've also enacted, I've heard, are they starting to shut down power in the United States over this?
Quebec had built a brand new interconnector to New England, and there was a period of time yesterday where they sent nothing across it because they needed to keep all the electricity for themselves. And they were getting imports from New York State. So I don't know. Quebec has been a mess. I had a podcast interview a couple of years ago with an analyst out of Quebec that says they're running out of power there. And, they keep bragging about how they have the cleanest grid and all this kind of stuff. And they have a lot of natural gas that they've banned development of. So, this this is part of the problem when they put all this wind on their grid and they produce nothing. So
I believe the greatest quote from President Trump out of Davos was, "Only stupid people put in wind." And he is right. And it's wind and solar at scale do not work on a AC grid. It does not work. You've got AC versus DC, and it's not really talked about a lot. And in fact, we've got to rebalance the grid and redo it. It is a mess. Only stupid people use wind. I love that quote. I mean, it's pretty simple.
Well, Rodney McInnes sent a great article over this morning on LinkedIn where it was that they're finding the natural gas power turbines are wearing out quicker because they're cycling up and down all the time in order to provide balance for the wind. So they're wearing out quicker because natural gas, like any turbine engine, once it's up, it wants to keep running at a steady state. And it's going up and down and wearing out quicker. So yet it's another parasitic thing of wind on the grid that wears out, brings down the other stuff that's on the grid to help keep it stable. So
and my answer to Rodney was, my dad was in Vietnam and they would do hot pilot switch outs on their F4. They would stand there with their engines running because the military runs turbines based off of how many times they shut on and off, not how many hours the engine works, because turbines behave better when they're in constant motion. And that is exactly what's happening. Constant motion. And so the wearing out of the grid, the Texas ERCOT spent $150 billion on wind and solar.
Yeah.
Do you know what we could have?
But that's the total investment in wind and solar.
Total investment. Yeah. Do you know what we could have for $150 billion?
Well, we could have a stable grid.
Thank you.
Powered by natural gas and nuclear. Yeah, we could sure do that. Yeah.
But if I could just say something with regard to wind and what President Trump said about the Chinese selling wind turbines to stupid people, just a few days later, 9 European countries proudly announced an offshore wind cooperation agreement that they're going to fill the North Sea with 100 gigawatts of new capacity, which is going to be interconnected with all of them, because it's going to be built jointly. And that is totally going to, drag electricity prices down, except, as the BBC, none other than the BBC noted, it could actually lead to higher electricity prices because the wind farm operators will be able to shop around for buyers and pick those who are offering higher prices. So yeah, in fact, Trump was absolutely right that stupid people do wind.
Yeah. And then there's the whole solar thing, because here in the UK, they're spending all this money for to put solar panels on everybody's house, or I don't know, some crazy thing that they put forward. And so then the opposition was asking, so where are these solar panels going to come from? Oh, they're coming from China.
Well, of course.
Well, yeah, because they're the cheapest.
They're the cheapest. And, there'll be container ships of solar panels coming to paper over the UK, which, as Trump again pointed out, where somebody did, that, the UK is the second worst for solar in the world.
Yeah. After Ireland, I believe.
After Ireland. Yeah. Shocker.
Since we're talking about this, I would just point out that on the Texas grid, during this major winter storm, and I'll make this brief, wind has actually done okay. Between 10 and 15% of our generation on the grid over the weekend has been from wind. So, I mean, it's a little underperforming compared to its almost 50% of all capacity, right? Or almost 30% of all capacity on the grid. But still, it's doing okay. Solar, meanwhile, has contributed almost zero. Why? Because it's been cloudy as their proponents like to remind me. And it gets dark at night. Oh, goodness. And a lot of the solar panels are covered in snow and ice. So the most predictable thing about solar is just like wind. It's going to fail you when you need it the most, which is during a major weather event like we've had in Texas over the weekend. Anyway.
And I would add that Meredith Angwin, in her book, Shorting the Grid, talks about that the grid is supposed to be designed for the people when they need it most.
Yes.
People are not supposed to be doing stuff for the grid. And that's another thing Catherine Porter points out, is that the people aren't supposed to be the ones, oh, we got to be tiptoeing around to preserve the grid. No, the grid is supposed to be designed for us. For us.
Right.
Yes, it's an on-demand service that needs to be balanced between supply and that demand every single second. And calling the opposite demand flexibility is not going to change the fact that it actually amounts to energy rationing. But I think, well, Kanye aside, he's flexible in his views and statements.
Very flexible.
Yeah, he's really highly flexible. But I think even half-mouthed admission from Chancellor Merz, or Putz, as you called him, that transition plan wasn't exactly working as intended is a kind of a positive sign that even these people who have been behind it 100%, well, not personally Merz, because he's only just become a chancellor. If even they are admitting that not everything is going according to plan, that's good. That means that there is some ounce of reality remaining there, the ability to acknowledge that reality. And the other thing is he talked about over-regulation in the EU, which needs to be talked about a lot more. And then there was this post from the European Commission, how they're going to synchronize legislation across all EU member states, and how it's going to be possible to set up a new company within 48 hours, regardless of where in the EU you are and where you're setting your company. Like, that's going to happen. Yes, sure.
Yeah.
And what do they go and do then? They're talking about their Digital Services Act. Again, they're talking about more regulation, including regulation to encourage innovation, because now we want to reduce our dependence on US big tech, because we're so over dependent on Amazon and Apple and Facebook and Microsoft and all the rest of them. So they're acknowledging that they over-regulate everything, and in their next breath, they announce more regulations, and that is the EU for you. But I will have to disagree with Stu as well. When you talk about realignment of trade blocs, well, the European Union just sealed a trade deal, a massive trade deal, the mother of all trade deals, with India. I haven't had time to look into it yet, but I think they're really trying to kill every single industry in Europe that they can.
Yep.
Sure seems that way. It sure
because
seems
what are you going to do with what you're going to trade with India? You will be importing cheap stuff that is too expensive to make at home. And the reason it's too expensive is, of course, European Union policies, but who cares about that? Yeah, I'm done.
Well, I think that, with respect to this trade deal with India, and like you, I haven't read it in great detail yet. But my concern, or what I think that the EU wants to do, is pull everybody into their emissions accounting scheme, because India would be like, whatever, I'm not doing that, whatever, and all that, right? But so I don't know what's going to happen with the trade agreement to import all this stuff, because as Asland and Pilot Car put there, India runs on coal for a big part of what they do. Now, some of the other panel, like not the high profile panels, but the other panels that really make the meetup of Davos at the World Economic Forum, They had people from India there talking about all the renewables they're putting in and how they need more finance. So there were a few sessions on climate finance, and India was right in there saying, give us more money and we'll build more renewable. But if you talk to the people in India, they don't want the renewable. Robert Bryce has done some great documentaries talking about what life is like in India for the average person. They're like, we don't want this renewable stuff. It's never there when we need it. We want coal. We want the reliable coal other people get. So I don't know. I still think that, Mark Carney says his stuff, but when he went back home, he gave this big speech and doubled down on net zero and all the DEI stuff. So,
what does Mark Carney's family live in the U.S. still?
I don't know. His daughter, or I don't know, his transgender child goes to Harvard.
Yeah.
So I don't want to misgender somebody, whatever.
No, we don't want you to record.
His wife still works for Eurasia Group, maybe. I'm not sure. Maybe she resigned, but it seems like liberals can hold on to stuff when they're in power and not have to divest or anything. It's like, Howard Lutnick had to divest from his company, $10 billion company. David Sachs had to divest from a whole bunch of his investments to remove the possibility of conflict of interest. Mark Carney's held on to all his stuff, all his Brookfield investments, all this different stuff, claims it's in a blind trust, which is garbage. You should be divesting, because otherwise, in the back of your mind, all my shares are in this blind trust. So what?
Right. The Pelosi methodology of investing.
Right. But, he's the leader of the country. And before we go on with respect to China, it's not just a trade agreement that was signed between Canada and China. Mark Carney was touting it as being a strategic partnership. And there were 5 MOUs signed. One of them was with information and cooperation on policing. China has at least 5 illegal police stations operating in Canada, according to Sam Cooper at the Bureau, who's on Substack. And if those allegations are true, what the heck is Canada doing wanting to share security information with China? There's lots of accusations, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's true, of China running for a large part, the different gangs and whatnot, the ports, particularly the port of Vancouver. They've been a source of fentanyl from Canada into the United States, and we're signing a strategic partnership? What the heck is that? So, and then China puts a lot of steel and aluminum they flood markets, right? And so we have this big tariff on the steel and aluminum. They're negotiating reducing that tariff so that Chinese steel and aluminum could come into Canada. So, when Bessent was on ABC yesterday and he was talking about the potential for EVs to flood into the American market, I'd be more concerned about that steel and aluminum flooding into the American market through Canada. And, to be honest, lastly, I think Carney does not want the Canada-US-Mexico trade agreement. And I think he's doing everything in his power to get Trump to pull the plug, because he doesn't want it.
Yeah, he's really doing a lot to undermine it. And of course, the president responded to all that late last week with the threat to invoke 100% tariff, on Canadian imports if they do sign any agreement with China on trade and security. So I took that as a kind of a warning that I think it's very obvious that the Trump administration is intent on enforcing the Monroe Doctrine in the Western Hemisphere, and that applies north of the United States as well as south. And so, there's real conflict brewing there potentially as well, and that will certainly undermine that trade agreement between the U.S., Mexico, and the United States and Canada.
Approximately 4% of Canadian GDP will be lost. We're talking hundreds of thousands of Canadian jobs lost. It is not good for the Canadian as a organization. I saw a video of a Canadian person saying, we got to wake up and smell 80% of our exports go to the United States. anything that we sign with China will not make up for the difference. Do the math.
I know, but the people who are supporting Mark Carney right now, I think they really believe this will be it's tough love, and it'll be great for Canadians in the long run, even though there will be pain in the short term. This is the thinking, because the progressives that Carney represents in Canada, and Gerald Butts and Catherine McKenna talked about this, about how the Liberal Party had moved so far left, they took a lot of the NDP and Green vote, particularly under Justin Trudeau. Carney is an extension of that. Those same people in the 1970s and 80s, when the Conservatives wanted more integration economically with the United States, they fought it tooth and nail. We had an election on it in 1988, and the rhetoric that went during that election is the same rhetoric we're hearing now from Mark Carney and all the people around him. They don't want the free trade agreement. They see integration as a bad thing, economic integration. And, Carney's made another statement on the weekend saying that Canada will be its best owned customer.
What?
Yeah. So apparently all the stuff we produce, we're going to use internally.
It doesn't work like that.
I know. I
mean, it could work for some countries, but it takes a very long time and a lot of local resources and cheap energy, which Canada has. But most importantly, the opposite of net zero planning and regulations and carbon taxes.
But he's still he's increasing the industrial carbon tax, and right. So, I mean, it makes no sense. It makes no sense. So he's making these statements, and he hasn't actually done anything, created this Building Canada home to the major projects office, lots of talk, lots and lots of talk, very little action. And some of the stuff he said in his speech and in the Q&A afterwards was just wrong. The Parliamentary Budget Office said, these numbers you're putting out there, they're just wrong. So anyway.
It's going to be another interesting year. Well, anything else you'd like to add, or shall we move to the stories?
Well, just one last thing about the WEF meeting. I just wonder what the group thinks about the new world that organization has entered into, with Larry Fink running the show of all people. Now that they forced out Klaus Schwab, is Larry Fink really an effective advocate for the World Economic Forum? I'm not sure.
Well, he's interim.
I know he's interim, but
co-chair.
He was the face of it this time. I'm not sure he did a great job. That's all. I just think he's not him talking about the need to move in a different direction on energy, for example, after being the chief prophet for ESG and DEI and all that BS that we've gone through the last 10 years, because he controls trillions of dollars of investment capital. To me, he just doesn't have any credibility at all. Not that Klaus Schwab did, but Klaus Schwab was, he led that organization forever since Henry Kissinger installed him in the job. Where's the credibility? Does anyone believe anything Larry Fink says about any of this stuff? I just wonder. To me, it kind of lessened the credibility of the whole organization having him as the.
You mentioned Henry Kissinger installing Schwab. So if Henry Kissinger installed Schwab,
germinated.
That would be out of the UK and the CIA and the whole thing. We're now having a big issue. Nice.
Go back and read the history of how that organization started. Yes, it's a CIA op from the go.
Wow.
I don't think they care about their credibility.
Yeah.
I really don't think, in the eyes of the public, these globalist thinking people in important positions with clout and with power, I think they have so successfully divided people into two camps and have managed to convince a lot of us that if you're not with me, you're against me, to genuinely believe this, that nothing else matters from then on. I mean, credible or not, he is leading the World Economic Forum right now, so he must be the right man for the job. It doesn't matter if he's saying the opposite of what he said at Davos 2 years ago, for example. It doesn't matter, really. Yeah. I mean, I saw this Dale Vince guy, really mentally unhygienic person, the green investor from the UK. I scrolled his X feed. Can't remember why I did this to myself, but he's putting out demonstrably false numbers about wind and solar and the transition, all that, and this is community note after community note, saying this is just wrong. He's lying, and he keeps doing it.
Yeah, that's the so does the minister. Yeah, so does the minister of net zero. He constantly, and Catherine keeps going, you guys are just lying. You're just lying to people. But they're supposed to be the arbiters of misinformation when but with respect to Klaus Schwab, and Larry Fink being the interim co-chair. And what's interesting is nobody talks about the other guy, who is Andre Hoffman, the head of the largest privately owned pharmaceutical company in the world, Roche Pharmaceuticals. And he is an absolute green zealot. So he was on a panel with Johan Rockström. And this is where I say that there were a lot of other panels going on that didn't get as much attention. And they were still with the whole climate change rhetoric, the net zero rhetoric, and all climate finance and all this. And Rockström gave another one of his, oh my gosh, planetary boundaries are being blown apart and the world's dying and so on and so forth. And Andre Hoffman's there on the panel. Yes, we really need to listen to Johan. He's got it right. We have to have respect for nature and everything. So it hasn't gone away. It's quiet. It's kind of more subdued, but it's still there. And the carbon border adjustment mechanism kicked in January, and we're going to see the fallout of that. When you talk about overregulation in the EU, say, sure, you might be able to set up a company in 48 hours. Good luck trying to operate it with all of these regulations, right? So you have a company, can't do anything. And this is why the comments with the little video link I sent Stu, he was the CEO of an investment firm. I can't remember what his name was, where he talked about the biggest benefit of Trump taking power. The biggest good thing was that overnight, the level of regulations that they were being, snowed under were gone. And he's like, it's just like this weight is lifted for businesses and innovators in the United States, that all of these insane rules, he's like, I would cringe when the Biden people would come on the phone because there would be some new web of regulations that we'd have to do. So, for all that people want to criticize Trump, I say try to be detached and look at what's actually happening, not all the rhetoric and all the spin and everything, but what's actually happening with respect to regulation and innovation and the building of manufacturing plants, all the construction happening. Yes, we might not see it for another 6 months, but there will be manufacturing happening in the United States, which is huge. Scott Bessent talked about it yesterday.
Yeah.
So, and the fact that we grew 4 to 5% and we could be hitting 6%, Howard and Scott Bessent brought that up. And the fact that we have billions coming in is a testament to what President Trump and the team. I love Scott Bessent. Scott Bessent was absolutely one of the unsung heroes of Davos. He was actually pretty funny. When Scott Bessent said, when he said, by the way, you had a complaint about the food, and he goes, well, they wanted us to eat bugs, and I'm thinking about eating bugs after eating Swiss food for a week. But it was pretty funny. I loved what he had said about trade. Scott Bessent is running on all cylinders. And when you look at what Scott Besson has set up as a complete secondary financial system to help Venezuela oil get to market and have us not actually in boots on ground through Qatar, that is actually going to have more worldwide impact to oil prices soon because of everything else. But that's for a whole nother discussion. Thanks to Scott Besson and Secretary Chris Wright.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, Besson was terrific. Yeah. His comparing Governor Newsom to Sparkle Beach Ken was classic.
Oh, wasn't that wonderful? Sparkle Beach Ken is absolutely eviscerating California, and that's going to be a big issue coming up. Sparkle Beach.
I hope people remember. Yeah. Well,
Okay.
Someone there said to remind Stu that Nixon went to China. Pierre Trudeau went first, and Nixon was really angry that Canada went first to talk to Mao. But I mean, Pierre Trudeau always was sympathetic to Mao and the Chinese Revolution. So that's no
Nixon was also trying to end the Fed, but that didn't go over well for either JFK or him. So
yeah, well, they've all been talking about a new world order since at least the 2008 financial crisis. So I'm not surprised that they've trotted that phrase out again. And I'm sure there will be a nice little warning on YouTube about, because I said those 3 words. There'll be a little disclaimer about only conspiracy theorists talk about it. So
yeah.
Okay, this is my story. So I talked about it. China, when Carney went to China to talk about removing the 100% tariffs on canola, I guess what's hampering the full removal of the tariffs is China wants the tariffs on steel and aluminum to be removed too, not just the EVs, but steel and aluminum and who knows what else. So it's no wonder that the United States is upset with what Canada's doing. And yeah, so that's my story. That's all.
And people can find you.
You can find me on Substack. I have a couple of posts about the negotiations with China and what the memoranda of understanding were about, and how so it's like where Carney's jumping from an American frying pan into the Chinese fire. So not sure this is a benefit to Canadians.
Love that illustration.
Yeah.
Yeah, cut it off.
Oh, here I am. Well, let's do DOE first. That is, of course, Chris Wright, the greatest energy secretary in American history, cutting $83 billion in loans to prioritize real energy solutions. The loan office, I mean, this article was kind of amazing to me. I found out for the first time that the loan office at our Department of Energy, get this, controls slush funds totaling $289 billion of loanable money for energy projects in the U.S. And of course, throughout the Biden administration, it was all going to wind and solar and batteries and all this pie in the sky BS. And they shoved about $85 billion out the door over the final 60 days of the Biden administration without proper vetting. And most of that is the focus of what Chris Wright has been doing in reclassifying these loans and clawing them back. So that's a great achievement for DOE and the Trump administration, kind of reorganizing all that. And then the other piece is about the Texas grid's performance. I would just say, summarizing the weekend, the world has changed in Texas on our power grid since 2001 and Winter Storm Uri, when we were severely lacking in dispatchable natural gas generation to keep the homes warm and people alive. 300 Texans lost their lives during that storm. Nobody in Texas has died this time for a lot of different reasons, but mainly due to reforms enacted by the Texas legislature, Governor Greg Abbott, and especially Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. His leadership on this has been extraordinary over the last 5 years. The reforms are working. The natural gas system has remained online. ERCOT hasn't turned off the power to critical infrastructure like they did in 2021. The Texas grid has performed very admirably during this major winter storm. And I just think everybody who was involved in invoking those reforms deserves full credit for it. And I'll be writing more about that this week at Forbes. And you can find everything I write and say, as terrible as it may be, at David Blackman's Energy Editions on Substack.
Oh, here, mine, Europe's gas storage is draining at the fastest pace in 5 years. Guess why? Because it's really cold and because LNG is really expensive. So LNG flows are actually weaker and they have to empty their storage, which they are going to do very soon, unless something changes. And for this to change, that's what my Substack today was about. The governments, you guys, the European governments would probably have to subsidize LNG purchases, because traders don't want to risk buying expensive and then seeing the price flop, because as it gets warmer in the spring, that's what's going to happen to prices. So we'll be subsidizing natural gas purchases.
Oh my gosh.
And and the other story is just pure fun. Michigan sues oil companies saying they colluded to restrain EV competition for decades, by the way.
Yeah.
They have been working in concert to not allow electric vehicles on the roads because they're bad.
I wonder if this is from the Learned Center Law School.
The Leering?
The Leering School, Law School up in Michigan. Nice.
I think it should be pointed out that Michigan is Jennifer Granholm's home state.
Oh, nice.
Just as an aside.
And Gretchen Whitmer, who's the governor, was at Davos going on about stuff.
Doing what? Do they go there on vacation? Yes, they do go there on vacation, pretending to be busy, doing important things.
Yeah, I think so.
We're going to give Brian a shout out real quick. I was contacted last week in project on Saskatchewan last minute that went to Chinese steel instead of Regina Steel, 200 kilometers away.
There's a steel mill. There's a steel mill in Regina, and they go figure that they would go with Chinese steel.
Yeah.
Imported.
I don't think it's repaired, but not going to happen. If the war stops, they stop too. The Ursulas and all the rest of them. Yeah, so these are my stories. Very funny, I thought, especially the European one. I've been following the gas in storage levels since December, and nobody cares. Nobody seems to care that they're draining really fast. Normally at this time of the year, it's about half full because they began fuller than they did this winter. And everybody's dismissing it because, there's so much US LNG. What if there isn't so much US LNG at prices that are relatively affordable?
I miss the days when they would have longer term contracts instead of the spot pricing. Spot pricing should be when there's an emergency or whatever. But otherwise, it would make more sense to have longer term contracts so that you have a steady state of refilling and stuff like that. I mean, all this variability and whatnot just makes it a mess. And
Europeans don't like long term gas contracts
anymore.
So interrupting you. Yeah. Because they're moving away from gas.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
But they're subsidizing it over the short term.
Except for where
And I write on Irene's Life on Energy. I try to do it regularly, and I succeed in doing it regularly.
And it's quite hysterical, by the way.
I love Irene's Substack.
Thank you.
Well, I had actually 3 stories here, and when you sit back and take a look, European natural gas storage may impact silver refineries, implications for global markets and investment opportunities. We just covered a little bit of the storage problem, but a side effect of that is the silver pricing. I did a podcast yesterday on the silver opportunities in the United States at theenergynewsbeat.substack.com, and had a lot of fun with that. The other story here is if China signs a deal with Canada, Trump puts 100% tariff on all products in Canada. And I went through a what if scenario and came up with what's going to happen to Canada if it does happen, and it ain't good. And then Sparkle Kin Beach Doll that our great Secretary Bessent called Governor Newsom. Shell's closing 1,100 gas stations as another major issue. And I'm going to be interviewing Katie Grimes. She is the editor-in-chief of the California Globe on Governor Newsom's knee pad adventures in Davos. So that's going to be a lot of fun. She has been outstanding on reporting on that. So she is absolute hoot on that. You can find all of my antics on theenergynewsbeat.substack.com, or you can go to energynewsbeat.co. I'd like to give a shout out to all the government agencies that are trying to take that site down. It is really pretty sad. Did I just say that out loud? It's kind of fun.
It's all those data centers in Northern Virginia that are after you, right?
Right. We get about 10,000 denial of service attacks a day on the site, and it just tickles me to death to find out who is attacking the site. You just, guys, have a great day.
Hey, one last thing before we go, because I always forget to do this up top. If you like this content, everyone, please go to YouTube, like and subscribe. It helps us down the road. And also you can follow all of us on X as well. We're all out there doing crazy things. And we'd like to see you around at our Substacks as well.
Yeah.
Thanks for being, David.
Thanks for the plug. That's awesome. And if I can just make one last comment, because we still have a couple minutes, is that I've been reading Robert Bradley's work on Enron. He has this whole four book series. Number 4 is coming out this spring, I guess. And it just made me realize how the Enron situation, the Enron scandal, has been rolled out globally, because that's what net zero is. Net zero is the Enron playbook on a global scale. And Larry Fink, you could even say, was the acolyte. We're going around doing this kind of circular profit. We're going to invest here and we're going to generate money and we're going to create these companies and they're going to get government money and it's all going to get cycled through and so on and so forth. So shout out to Robert Bradley and his amazing work. And I think that historical context is really important for what we're seeing here.
And Enron, by the way, designed the power grid for California and Texas.
Yeah, which is why it's a mess.
That's why they both were such a mess. Texas is finally recovering, though. California's not.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for all the comments. They were great. And no trolls today.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Yay. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for all the questions and comments.
And have a great week.
We will see. Wait a minute, I get a compliment. I love the glowing microphone. Thank you for all your time. That's actually my MD Bone. That's actually my forehead. I'm not like the German Chancellor Putz. I shave my one spot of hair that he has growing there. I think that's either a shoe print or something on his head. I'm not sure what it is. Anyway, thanks, guys. Let's go ahead and have a great week. Everybody. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.